Story number 3. The Curse of the Square-Shaped Buffers. Are you serious right now? The fat director was fuming. Gordon had had yet another accident. This time, he'd crashed into the buffers at Teignmouth Station. He had been coming into the yards much too quickly, and it had made a terrible mess. "Sir," cried Gordon, looking for every excuse under the book, "it was that 98462! She told me I was too slow with the express, and that I needed to be on her level." "And so you came storming into the station over the speed limit?" cried the fat director. Gordon said nothing. He felt rather silly now. "It's off to the works with you to have new buffers fitted. Once that's done, you'll pull goods trains until you've learnt about speed etiquette." "Yes, sir," said Gordon sadly. Gordon was at the works. His front had been mended, and he was waiting for his new buffers. However, when the workmen came to fit them, he was very surprised by what he saw. "Those aren't regular buffers," he cried. "We've none left," replied the workman. "We had to use the last ones to repair some coaches. The buffers on them were damaged. Wonder who did that." "Oh yes, it's a real mystery. Anyways, these spare ones were in the back, so they'll have to do, I'm afraid." Gordon harumphed as the workman began to fit a pair of rather unusual square-shaped buffers. When Gordon did return to work, the other engines stared at his new buffers. Most of them hadn't seen anything like it. Henry, who had not long been let out of the tunnel, wearing a new coat of blue paint, was the most vocal about it. "I've seen many strange things in my time," he smiled, "but I've never seen buffers shaped like those before." "Oh, be quiet, Henry," snapped Gordon. "I would like to see you pull these off." Henry just laughed. "I wouldn't dare. You would never catch me wearing something like that." "Ignore him, Gordon," smiled Neil, an elderly box-shaped tank engine. "I think they look grand." "Oh, Pa, like you would understand, Neil," Gordon snapped as he puffed away. Neil was hurt and rather cross. While Gordon was away from passenger duty, he was asked to help out with the construction of a new branch line. The branch started at a station called Culdee before turning off the main line and going up into the mountains. It ended at a big town called Pilgodred, where a huge power station was located. Along the way, there was a smaller junction station called Kirkmansion. This station connected to a smaller railway that went up Culdee Fell Mountain, biggest mountain on the whole of Sodor. Gordon would often meet the engines at the station. They were very strange looking, with slanted boilers, back-to-front cylinders, and purple paintwork. They even pushed their coaches up the line instead of pulling them. "They're strange," said Gordon at first. "But they're useful," added the driver. "They're able to show passengers sights that they've never seen before, and go to places that most engines can't reach." One afternoon, Gordon had stopped at Kirkmansion with a train of trucks. One of the mountain engines was also at the station, dropping off farm goods. "Hello," he smiled warmly. "My name is Shane Dooney. Who are you?" "I'm Gordon. I'm delivering supplies for the new power station." "Oh, you must be very strong," gasped Shane. "My brothers and I could never carry something like that." Gordon grinned modestly, and the two engines started to chat. Soon, the topic of Gordon's buffers came up. Gordon hesitated at first, but told Shane what happened. Well, sort of. "In the end, it really wasn't my fault," finished Gordon. "If Madison learned to keep an eye on her oil tankers, the rails would never be so slippery." Shane thought and looked back at Gordon's buffers. "Those buffers you got," he began. "Those are spare from the works." "Well, yes." "Oh no." "Oh, what?" "Has nobody told you?" Shane Dooney cried. "Those buffers, Gordon. are cursed. Cursed? Repeated Gordon. Yes, persisted Shane. Many years ago, they belonged to an engine who worked on your railway. I'm a bit fuzzy on the details, but from what I heard, this engine constantly had bad luck. They believed that his curse was down to his unusual shaped buffers. Then one day, he crashed right off the rails with a passenger train. The only thing to be salvaged from his wreck were his square-shaped buffers. The buffers that caused him so much grief. And the very buffers that you are wearing. I fear, Gordon, the curse might have passed on to you. Gordon stared, then snorted. Puh, cursed buffers. Don't be vulgar. Don't say that, cried Shane. You'll make them angry. Gordon raised an eyebrow at Shane before puffing away. All this talk of cursed buffers, well, to him, it wasn't very dignified. However, when Gordon arrived at the new power station, there was trouble. The turntable isn't working, I'm afraid, said the foreman. You're going to have to take the down train backwards. Gordon spluttered. Backwards? We have no choice, sighed the driver. Come on, let's just get this over with and get home. Gordon seethed in fury as he was coupled onto the back of his train and started pulling it backwards down the line. As they passed the junction for the mountain railway, Shane Dooney gave Gordon a pitiful look. Gordon just ignored him. There's no such thing as curses. There's no such thing as curses. There's no such thing as curses, he grumbled to himself as he continued down the line. Soon, they were heading towards Culdee. There's no such thing as curses. There's no such thing as curses. There's no such thing as... Whoa! And with a sudden jolt, Gordon stopped. He looked back in surprise and groaned. The points leading back down to the main line hadn't been set right, and Gordon's back tender wheels had been derailed and were now blocking the main line. His driver and fireman examined the damage. We best call for a crane, sighed the driver. I hope it gets here quickly. It'll be dark soon, replied the fireman. As the sun began to set over the mountains in the distance, the breakdown gang finally pulled in. The train was being pulled by Neil, who found Gordon's situation rather funny. Oh dear, Gordon, he laughed heartily. It's not funny, Gordon snapped back. Just hurry up and get me back on the rails. Soon Gordon's tender had been re-railed. The points, however, were damaged and needed repairs. Ugh, I'm afraid it will be a rather long wait before we can get moving again, sighed Neil. Gordon rolled his eyes. It really wasn't his day. He began to think about what Shane had said. No, he said to himself, there's no such thing as curses. But he wasn't sure now. When Gordon finally returned to the yards, the fat director was waiting. He was not impressed. When I purchased you, Gordon, he began sternly, I was promised a good deal. A fast engine with the quality training he was given. Gordon blinked. He wasn't quite sure where this was going, but instead you get stuck on hills, spook half the island with your whistle, get stuck again, this time in a tunnel, crash into the back of stations, and derail on points. Gordon looked down at his square-shaped buffers. Despite how big he was compared to the stout gentleman, he felt rather small. I know, sir. I'm really sorry. The fat director sighed. Lucky for you, we're still going through a bit of a locomotive crisis. Therefore, you will be punished this time, but I want you to think long and hard about things going forward if you want to continue working on my railway. I understand, sir, sighed Gordon sadly. The fat director seemed content with this answer and ordered Gordon to return to his shed. Gordon did so without any more fuss. It was dark now, and the other engines were all asleep, apart from Neil, who had not long returned himself. Neil had noticed Gordon's strange behaviour and decided to not let it go unchecked. What's the matter, Gordon? I can tell something's bothering ye. Gordon faltered. Not only he was feeling sad about what the fat director had said, but he was really worried about what Shane had said. He debated telling Neil. However, he soon decided to confess and told Neil about Shane. I'm not saying that I believe him, he quickly added. It's just rather strange. You probably think I'm being silly. Gordon expected Neil to laugh in his face and tell him how stupid he was being. But Neil didn't laugh. He looked deadly serious. Oh dear, Gordon. I'm afraid this Shane Dooney character is right. Those buffers are indeed cursed. Gordon gasped. No. Oh yes, answered Neil, as he thought back to the old days. They used to belong to this big tank engine named Lachlan. He used to pull passenger trains like you did, but he was unlucky and always had little accidents. The source of all of his problems came from those buffers. The rest of Shane's story is indeed correct. The accident he had, oh my, simply horrific. I'm shuddering just remembering it. Oh. Gordon's eyes widened in horror as he stared at the old boxy engine. Now you are placed with those buffers, Neil continued, the very same ones worn by Lachlan. The only way for you to overcome the curse is simple. You must work as hard as you possibly can, with no issues, accidents, or complaints. Are you up for the task? Oh, yes, stammered Gordon. Good, Neil grinned. I have faith in you, Gordon. I know you'll be able to overcome this. Gordon smiled nervously. He knew what needed to be done. He just didn't like it. Gordon worked surprisingly hard for the next few days. He did his work without fuss and delivered supply trains to the power station in record time. The other rangers were very surprised by his sudden change of behaviour. I don't understand it, Neil, Madison said to the old box tank engine one day. I've never seen Geordie work this hard before. Ah, grinned Neil. It's simple, really. I just told him his new buffers were cursed. You know, the spares that used to belong to Lachlan. Madison burst out laughing at this. Oh, Neil, now that is funny. Neil chuckled. Just make sure that you don't tell him. Madison smiled and sighed, thinking back to her old work colleague. Lachlan was a good engine despite his troubles. You know, sometimes I do miss the big guy. Indeed, said Neil. Despite his bad luck, he was a hard worker. It's a shame that his old railway decided that they wanted him back. Ah well, said Madison. At least he's still around. He's probably the most hardest working engine in the Midlands now. Ugh, kinda like Gordon, added Neil. Right now, he's probably the most hardest working engine on Sodor. At last, Gordon was soon allowed to take his express trains once again. The Fat Director had been very pleased with his work. I'll admit, your behaviour these first few months have made me doubtful, but you have proven over these last few weeks that you are indeed a really useful engine. Gordon was very proud, not only because the Fat Director was beginning to think better of him, but because he had finally been able to break the curse of the square-shaped buffers. Of course, he wasn't very happy when Madison finally did tell him that the whole story was made up.